year of our Lord 2025, and we are still getting players dropping the ball before they go over the end line. I have never understood this trend. Not that it's just I don't know why. Why would you not?
Individual thing. It's more about like, all right, Deshaun Jackson, Adonai Mitchell. These individual people are doing it.
Yeah, I don't understand it. Like DeMarcado. So we have one of the most wildest losses I think I've ever seen. It was to the point where like I had to go rewatch this game because I could not believe that this happened. So if you were like me and probably a bunch of other people, you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, the Cardinals are cruising to another Cardinals victory where they scored 24 points and, you know, they kind of allow Titans to get back. But then you start digging in and you're like, wait a second, the Titans actually won this game. How did they do it? Well, one, we have DeMarcado going into the end zone, drops the ball. Okay. Then Cam Ward throws a pick. Okay, this is awesome for the Cardinals. He throws a pick going into the red zone. Dorian Taylor-Demerson drops the pick. So he has it. He's completed the pick. It's an interception. He's running, and he drops it. Where does it go? It stumbles its way into the end zone, and Tyler Lockett falls onto it for a Titans touchdown. I cannot. And then you just watch it, and it's just like, it's almost like they couldn't believe it. And by that point, the Titans feel like they've got something. This is a young team that is not winning very many games. Calvin Ridley had a throwback game of 5 receptions for 132 yards. No throwing touchdowns in this game. You can't make this game up.
Like it's 2020, like you said, in the year of our Lord, it's 2025. No passing touchdowns. This feels like a Chiefs game, but also not at all because there was a lot of offense. It's just ridiculousness all the way around, which I want that moves us to our next point. Kyle Shanahan and the ridiculousness of Mac Jones kicking the crap, I guess, at least out of the Rams defense, because Mac Jones, we've seen it over the last few years with, going all the way back to Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. This year, maybe it's Daniel Jones. A little bit of the jury's still out on that. But maybe Mac Jones is going to be that next guy that goes from backup to starter-ish, because this is a coaching league. It is a lot about chess match. It's about the chess match and schemes and all that good stuff. And Mac Jones was a first-round pick, for the love of God. And when you give him a great play caller like Kyle Shanahan, and it is kind of interesting that you have it here. Kyle Shanahan deserves Coach of the Year. We're about a month through the season, and I think that we get great coaches lost in the mix because the stat is Phil Jackson only ever won 2 Coaches of the Year because they won so many championships, and Kyle Shanahan may have so many long runs in the playoffs and hopefully Super Bowls in his future that he may not get a Coach of the Year award, but for reasons specifically like this, because he can do things with, guess what, Mac Jones of all people.
Yeah, and people forget Mac Jones in his rookie season was actually a Pro Bowler. People were pretty excited about him.
A touchdown in the Pro Bowl. I know it's the Pro Bowl.
Yes, but I do want to say, like, one, we know that Shanahan wanted Mac Jones in the draft, didn't get him. And we also know that he is probably a perfect fit in this offense. I know that people were talking about, man, don't you wish that they probably would have had Mac Jones last year so that they could really get a side-by-side comparison between him and Purdy to know, hey, do we need it? I think it was Bill Barnwell for ESPN was saying, like, this is basically your side-by-side comparison.
Well, and all of a sudden, there's 265 million reasons why there's not a quarterback controversy. Like, there really kind of is one because of what we see on the field. And there is, I think this is kind of reductive, but, like, basically, if you plug in anybody into Kyle Shanahan's system, they'll be successful. I don't think that's necessarily true, but you put in a starting caliber quarterback, and you can do some things and be a great team like the LA Rams with a great coach like Sean McVay, great quarterback, and all those different things. And overtime, I might add. So I think that it is very interesting where, like, sure, you can plug in anybody, but again, it goes back to the chess match. But then timing is all about everything. But then there's 265 million reasons why there's not going to be a quarterback controversy.
I agree with you. I looked at it today. If you look at, they cannot cut him for, or at least move on from him for at least 2 more years, just because of the way the dead cap would just be too much. You won't save any money and it won't offweigh
They
itself.
paid him early too.
Yes. And look, that's the price of doing business.
Yeah.
You didn't, and look, if Purdy has continued to play and we have the same, actually, we don't know this. So obviously hindsight's 2020 here. We do now have 2 games versus 3 games from this year. What does this look like? Mac Jones is getting the ball out much faster than Purdy. Purdy's actually holding on to the ball this year, which is pretty odd. It's right at 3 seconds. Mac Jones is at 2.7. And the difference between that number is why Jones has half as many pressures as Purdy. Purdy's holding on to the ball a little bit longer. Mac Jones is getting it out. So do I think there's a QB controversy? No, but I will say this. If I am Kevin O'Connell and I am not fully committed to JJ McCarthy going forward, I am 100% going after Mac Jones in the offseason and just throwing money at him because he is the perfect quarterback for the system. And I think that we're seeing this through the 49ers.
Yeah, speaking of the Minnesota Vikings, they came back to beat the Cleveland Browns in the second leg of their overseas tour, this time in London. Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz, but also he hits Jordan Addison for the final play of the game, scoring the touchdown. They end up winning. So coming back to beat the Browns, and Dylan Gabriel does not look bad in his debut. How long do you expect that to last? And obviously the Shador Sanders drama and all that stuff, we don't have to talk about it, but it does look like or at least on the outset, it looked like he was going to get a chance. But if Dylan Gabriel keeps it up and they're going to be in winning positions, especially with that defense, who knows?
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel, to me, people are always going to, left-handed quarterbacks are always going to look weird to a lot of people. So you have to kind of look at the stats.
I don't like looking at his name. I don't like looking at his name at the other side of it bothers me. I see Tagovailoa and I'm like,
yeah,
that's not how it goes.
He obviously is a better runner. He is a shorter quarterback. I really think so. The thing about Stefanski is that he is a Shanahan, the father derivative. So he's on the Kubiak side of things. I really think with him that moving him around, they kept him clean, quick intermediate throws. He's not throwing down. I think he had, lean in the run game with Judkins. You've got quick throws to the intermediate. Jerry Jeudy looks like he's going to get pissed off at some point. That'll probably be an issue down the road. But really, I think the story of the year so far from this game is going to be the Vikings defense. My buddy Matt Collar over at the Purple Insider, he pointed out and he tweeted, the Vikings defense hasn't felt as dominant because of opposing teams' run game succeeding, but they are 4th in points per drive and 2nd in yards allowed per drive.
Wow.
I responded to him. This is the point of what everything is going on this offseason. We talked about it during the offseason. They are actually willing to be less good against the run in order to force people to actually run the ball. So what has happened in the past couple of years with this defense is that it's so blitz heavy on early downs that teams later in the season, as more and more film is going on, they can kind of see, okay, this motion or this formation, this personnel matchup, this player on defense when they're in this spot doesn't work against the pass, and then we're going to attack that. That's why we've talked about this too. This is another thing that we've talked about on this podcast, is that over time, this defense degrades. So what Flores was like, look, we're going to really amplify the pass rush. We're not going to be as good against the run, but we are going to help our secondary out so that this thing can be sustainable. I think we see this defense this is the trend, right?
Yeah.
Very rarely do you have an elite defensive run stopping and then an elite defensive passing. It just doesn't happen very often. If you're going to be bad at one, or you're going to be, in this case, mediocre at one, you do it running the ball because they're not going to score points that way. So I think less blitzing, more scheme. You're actually helping. I know this is counterintuitive, but you're helping your secondary out that way by just not stacking the box 100% of the time and then forcing offenses like the Packers and the Lions, who use motion and then a vertical passing game to really mess with your hot they're called hot coverages, and it's the bingo hot coverages where they literally are just sitting there staring at the quarterback. And so I think that this has really allowed the Vikings to kind of, it's weird to say this, blossom as a defense, even though statistically,
one of the best.
Right. But here's the thing about it. They were so good on the front end that it covers up some of the deficiencies in the back end when you look at like whole season efficiency ratings. So I think that this is a more sustainable pattern.
Yeah. The Colts, they flattened the Las Vegas Raiders 40-6. And I kind of like the theme of this pod where it's, I mean, again, we talk scheme and talk more ball than any other podcast. You couldn't, no, I'm joking. But I think the Colts are kind of proof that this is a coach's league, or at least bits and pieces of it, because Shane Steichen, you saw the ebb and flow that the Eagles went through after he left, and you see it that the Colts are able to stay relatively afloat. They have a really good offensive line, Jonathan Taylor, and obviously the quarterback situation has been fluid. It seems like they have some consistency with Daniel Jones, but then on top of that, they bring in Lou Anarumo this summer, and he kind of changes the defense along with some of the pieces that they brought in. So talk to me about the Colts. And I mean, they lose to the Rams last week on a muff coverage or Adonai Mitchell play along with it. But at the same time, the Colts, they look legit, and the AFC South looks really, really good. And we're recording this on Monday. The Jags play the Chiefs tonight, so we don't know the outcome of that. But the AFC South looks way more interesting than it has in years.
I really think the Colts are exactly what, let's say, 2023. This is what we wanted the Browns to be, right? Yeah. Imagine if the Browns got a quarterback. Like, imagine if, they got a Daniel
Watson,
Jones.
what he was supposed to be.
Right. Or even a Sam Darnold. I mean, just think of like you interject one of these guys that's kind of, glowed up here after. Imagine if they would have been able to get something like that if they didn't have Deshaun Watson's contract hanging over them.
Yeah.
They have one of the best rosters. I mean, the Colts, if you really look at it, it's like, I started doing it when they beat the Broncos. I was like, okay, I mean, I knew this roster was good. I didn't realize how good it was. Then you give Shane Steichen a quarterback that can actually run this offense. I mean, look, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl on this offense, and you're looking at a guy that's probably comparable, and he's just being efficient. And you have a star running back, which is something that again, Eagles didn't necessarily have. I love that Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs. I'm glad that guys like Jonathan Taylor are starting to get some love from the rest of the country, because it's like, everybody talks about the Lions and their run game for the past couple of years. This has been a team that has wanted to run the ball and has been very, very good at it. They just haven't had a quarterback. Now they have a quarterback that just doesn't lose them games. Then on the flip side, you have the Raiders. Geno Smith goes to a worse roster. Yeah, sure, Chip Kelly's there. But like we said in the offseason, who is he throwing the ball to other than Brock Bowers?
And Brock Bowers was out. So was Michael Mayer.
Right. So it's like, insert the cricket noise, because there's nobody there. There's nobody there. So you're seeing that. Look, Geno is one of those guys that he's going to take chances. He's kind of like a better Jameis Winston. I think that he's kind of like
Nobody's better than Jameis Winston.
I know, to you. I know for you, I'm sorry. But for, us ball knowers out there, the film grinders, I'm just messing. But, because Geno's one of those like Trevor Lawrence, where it's like, oh, he's the great separator. Are you a ball, are you a ball watcher, film grinder, or are you just a fan? If you're a fan, you don't really realize. Look, I love Geno Smith. I think that he's great. He's going to take a lot of chances. If you don't put a roster around him, he's going to struggle. We saw this. He's still, even with the roster that he had in Seattle last year, he was still going to throw interceptions. So I think Jones is a perfect fit for Steichen. Anarumo is cooking with this roster. There's a reason why we've mentioned it on, I think, almost every podcast. We bring them up. There's a reason why he went and got Cam Bynum. There's a reason why they went and got the guys that they did in that secondary. Look, they still are not great at corner. I think it's going to come to bite them a few times this year. But this is a team that I would not want to play right now.
Yeah, and Lou Anarumo is the defensive coordinator that kind of hacked the unstoppable Chiefs, and especially in the second half of that, I believe it was the 2021 AFC Championship game when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, whatever year that was, and so he hacked it, and has just been the players and the personnel in Cincinnati fell apart because it's Cincinnati, but whatever. Now he's figuring things out in Indianapolis, and it's very interesting. We got a lot of Coach of the Year nods here, and I think Shane Steichen could be in there.
100%. I mean, look, he got a quarterback, and then he got rid of Gus Bradley, who was just running
Daniel Jones. Like, I know we talk like Daniel Jones is in a completely different light, but 6 months ago it was like him or Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, you're right. We were, people were like, well, I guess we'll just go with one, or, I don't really care, just don't throw, just don't lose us games. Well, here he is. He worked with Kevin O'Connell, who again is kind of becoming a quarterback whisperer. And then he's now in a system that's very quarterback friendly. I mean, look, that's always been the knock on Jalen Hurts, right? It's like, oh, he's a system quarterback. Well, at some point, man, the guy's won 2 Super Bowls. We got to give him some sort of a credit for being a good quarterback. So I think like, Steichen on part of this is like, look, you're seeing what happens when you get elite coaching and then you have really good players. That's when the magic happens. You can't have a great coach with no players, and you can't have great players with no coaching, because then we see where that goes. So I think the Colts are legit, and they're going to be fun to watch the rest of the year.
The Saints and Giants, per usual in the NFL, 2 bad teams play, and it's like, wait, that's kind of fun to watch. What's going on over there? And I think the better team won, but I don't think there's a ton to see there. But another Coach of the Year candidate, as long as they start stacking wins, in my opinion, Brian Schottenheimer, especially with the Cowboys, what we were expecting to see, what they're them without CeeDee Lamb right now. George Pickens is stepping up, and the defense isn't good, but also what are we expecting? And they're starting to do the things that the owner wanted. But I think the biggest story, at least out of Dallas, and it really sucks that they're not stacking wins and they have as good of quarterback play as they have. But again, I think Dak Prescott, at his absolute best, is a top 5 quarterback in the league. And I think that's just the absolute truth. And unfortunately, injuries have gotten in the way, and the drama of being the Dallas Cowboys quarterback is all around him at all times. But his last fully healthy season, Dak Prescott finished second in MVP voting. He's healthy again. That's how the Cowboys win, and he's going to need to be as good as he has been. And I know it's the Jets, and the Jets are the Jets. But at the same time, Dak Prescott has been phenomenal.
Yeah, this is a throwback Big 12 team, to put a college spin on this. They are going to be all offense. The defense is going to be atrocious. It's not – look, I've said this before. It's about 50% on Eberflus. It's about 50% on the players that they have on this roster. We knew going in, we talked about it. Them and the Bengals are pretty much going to have to score 40 points a game to try and win. That's what they're having to do. Dak is playing out of his absolute mind. I think one of the biggest things here schematically is what's the difference between like Schottenheimer and then what we saw with
McCarthy.
McCarthy. So what's the difference between Schottenheimer and McCarthy is the fact that Schottenheimer, and he said this early in the offseason, is like, I want to marry early down, run, and pass. I want everything to look the same. Motion, shifts, everything's going to look the same. But at the end of the day, you don't know if we're running or passing. We've heard Dak talk about it. I think Dak's absolutely loving it. We're seeing more motion, a little bit more creativity, and it's just amplifying an already talented roster. When CD comes back, it's just going to make things even better. I mean, I've been really excited for Pickens. This has been one of those situations where it's like, okay, is he a product of his environment, or is he like basically the environment, like, and he's just being the product of it, and he is just putting it out there, and he is who he is? I think what we're really seeing is that he can ball, and he's very, very good. And now we're going to amplify that too with CD. I think this is also an example of early down efficiency. If you do not have a good mix of run pass and you're not marrying those things early downs, then you are going to be behind the 8 ball. If you are saying, hey, well, here, because I heard it on the radio this morning, they were talking about it, about like basically it was, when Schottenheimer wasn't calling it, it was essentially like, here's our runs, here's our passes. And you could tell which one was which depending on who was on the field and what you were getting. And then now what Schottenheimer's done is essentially said, look, I want everything to look the same. So our run actions are all going to look like our passing actions, and we're going to build off of that. That is how you become a good coordinator and not a play caller.
Yeah. I think what's very interesting is that the Dallas Cowboys over the last 5 years have run kind of parallels with the Chiefs where they won a bunch of 12. They had a bunch of 12-win seasons, and then, but obviously without the playoff success and everything. But then even this year, where you see without having their number one in, they're able to get the rest of the receiving core, and in Dallas they have George Pickens, and he's a big emphasis. And Ferguson is a quality tight end in the NFL, so that's really interesting. But moving forward to another, I don't know what else to call this other than a bitch slap. The Baltimore Ravens lose to the Houston Texans, who needed to win the game. But aside from not having Lamar in the game, I think I heard on Red Zone or something that $169 million of the Ravens' salary cap this year was out in this game. And that Lamar, Nnamdi Madubuike, Kyle Hamilton,
Hamilton
a bunch of guys out of this game. So they're bound to lose this game. But again, what else do you call it than what I did?
Yeah, and I think, there's no run game, injuries everywhere. This will be a lot. This will be a lost season. And this, if you're a Baltimore fan, you're looking at this and just being like, look, get Lamar healthy. The defense is nowhere where it needs to be. We got to figure out if it's the players, if it's just injuries, and that's what it is. We got to if I'm the GM, which by the way, they have one of the best setups in the entire NFL. So I'm not concerned. This is not a long-term concern. This is the NFL. You have years where you think you're going to be good. It started this offseason when they lost one of their safeties. Now they have to kind of leave Hamilton back where he was. Malachi Starks doesn't just hit and is an all-pro. You have problems at corner. You have problems now with the interior. Things are falling apart. And I think someone posted this, and I thought it was perfect, is that the loss to the Texans, who, by the way, arguably have the number one defense in the NFL in terms of a roster, there was blood in the water. They knew it. They went after it. Cooper Rush had no answer, and really Baltimore had no answer. But somebody was like, Lamar needs to just send this tape to everybody that votes for the MVP and just say, look, this is why I'm the MVP. And I 100% agree. He is the whole team. And when you are struggling on offense and you're struggling on defense, it's just, and you have kind of like a run up into a team with the Texans that is going to make the playoffs, is going to challenge the Colts for that division. It's not good. And I think that you're going to see probably them move on from Orr in this offseason. He's got to figure out that this was coming anyway at some point, probably.
The way the season started last year, for the first half or more of the season, they weren't very good. And I mean, I hate to be this guy and put a guy on the hot seat, but I mean, some questions around Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh, excuse me. Sorry, Jim. Don't mean to put you on the hot seat. But John Harbaugh, because of they've lost some leads, they did in week 1 against Buffalo. The way this season is starting, the playoff meltdowns, and just kind of long-term success, long-term plan moving forward. It's like, do you just kind of need a different voice? It's been 18 years with the same team. And not only that, they've kind of, I don't know exactly like what the plan is for the passing, like all the problems you're talking about, because if it's just like run it back with John Harbaugh, let's see. And I'm not saying that he should absolutely get fired, but at the same time, it's like, what is the biggest plan? Because there's I don't know 300 million reasons why you can't get rid of Lamar and Derrick Henry and whatever else. So like, I'm not saying fire Harbaugh, but like mutually part ways with him in the offseason.
Well, and I don't necessarily think Harbaugh has to go. I think what you're seeing here is that, one, Lamar is a team. It's kind of like the old Tom Moore of like, we don't practice. If Peyton Manning goes down, like we don't practice.
We don't practice aft.
Yeah, we don't practice that. So we know we're going to lose. I think offensively they kind of have that feeling of like, look, I think Lamar, we talked about it last week. I think Lamar has gone with the pendulum too far. He's I wouldn't say afraid isn't the word, but he doesn't want to run. He wants to pass, and I get it. I think there's been so much pressure on him to prove that he's a quarterback. Look,
day one,
dude, you're Lamar. You're one of one.
2 MVPs, dude.
Yeah, just
there's
play.
Nothing anybody else can say. Like at this point, go win the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like, however you do it, that's all you need on your resume. Just do that. We don't care how you do it, as long as you end up with the trophy. We want to see, like, honestly, I want to see a running quarterback win a Super Bowl, because Mike Vick didn't do it. Randall Cunningham didn't do it. Colin Kaepernick got really close, but that's Colin Kaepernick. We haven't seen a quarterback of Lamar's caliber and like there's all of the culture around all the stuff that you want to say around it. That like, we haven't seen a quarterback like Lamar Jackson be as successful as Lamar Jackson, with the exception of one thing: just go do it.
Just go do it. Yeah, I mean, and here you have in the year where you have multiple quarterbacks leading their team in rushing because of scrambles, like Jaden Daniels, and I mean, it's so funny. Like Jaden Daniels is basic. But Jaden Daniels is basically playing like what we would love Lamar to do. Look, he has like all these, like, I think it was like, I saw the stat on it was like 85 scrambles compared to like everybody else is in the 20s. And it's like, look, Lamar, we don't need you to get to 85, but it would be nice if you were at least like 40. Go ahead. If you see it open, take it. We don't want you taking those extra hits because we learned what that looks like a couple years ago. Remember when they started peeling it back? Yeah. My concern, and where we'll end this in terms of the discussion with the Ravens, is I do think they've got to, again, restructure that defense, at least with – this was coming. We've talked about the brain drain for the Ravens. They got away with it a little bit last year. It kind of reared its head in the playoffs. But when you lose Jannard Wilson, who ran your back end, you lose Weaver, who was running your front end, you lose McDonald, and then you lose Minter, who, by the way,
I mean, just recycling year after year after
yes,
year.
You look awesome. Well, it finally, that attrition finally. And look, this is not an indictment on Orr did a fantastic job last year. I just think they want everything in-house and they want everything to trickle up through in-house. I just think that has got them into a little bit of a trouble where they probably should have went outside of the organization and brought some people in. The problem with hiring a very young coordinator who is homegrown is that when you bring outside guys, that's going to bring influence. So in that system and in that culture where he's going to be the one voice, now I got to have to kind of give these other guys a voice. And I don't think Harbaugh wanted that. It will be very interesting going on. If they figure it out again next year, then it's like, okay, or at this year, the defense kind of figures it out. I know they've got injuries, but let's say they kind of figure some things out. Then it's like, okay, I think we can keep doing this, but we're going to need to get him help. You got to get him help.
Zach Orr is only like a couple years older than me. You want me calling you defense? Like, you want me out there giving
it? And defensive coordinators traditionally, especially at the NFL level, are older. We do have a couple of
your Wink Martindales and Dom Capers and Monty Kiffins, and like I was just trying to rifle through my head earlier today, or a couple of days ago, of like the different defensive coordinators that are famous, but not because they were ex-head coaches, like a Monty Kiffin, not even like a Steve Spagnuolo type who was a head coach. Monty Kiffin's around because of like, hell yeah, Tampa 2 was awesome.
Right. So I think I don't want to necessarily hit the eject button yet. I do think that there will be some sort of a reshuffling. I think you have to. I think you've had too much turnover. This is a lost season. It's an easy example. It's like an easy way to hit reset, and hopefully they can get it figured out.
All right, a great Bucks and Seattle game. I texted you on. I text you about every Sunday morning, just as like a quick little preview, basically my betting habits. Which also, Tampa 3-point dogs going across the country, easiest bet I ever cashed. Awesome. Baker Mayfield is like, oh really? Sam Darnold bet.
Got it.
And so that was just an incredible game going both ways. Seeing Ohio State when they go on recruiting trips to wide receivers, it's just like, hey, you see that? Come here. Come to school here.
Yeah, and I think at one point we had like 5 or 6 straight touchdowns, like touchdown drives by both teams. I mean, it was just a classic shootout. And then too, Egbuka and Smith and Jigba combined for almost 300 total yards of receiving. Insane. Neither one was guardable. And the thing is, it's like we're not even talking about Mike Evans now. We're not even talking about the fact that Godwin come back. I think everybody's like realized, oh, this Egbuka kid is really, really good. The fact that he even dropped that low. He was the real guy. You know, I think Marvin Harrison, yeah, he was special because of his size and things like that, and he could do things outside. But man, people forget Egbuka was kind of the engine of that offense, running all those crossing routes, catching the ball in the short and intermediate. Smith and Jigba is unguardable on the inside. You can't guard him. So that was a fun game. Also, can we just admit that the old jerseys for both those teams should be the jerseys that they should wear 100% of the time?
The Seahawks jerseys, ever since they went to the ones that they have now,
the Microsoft jerseys. I'm calling them the Microsoft, the Xbox jerseys. That's all they are. They're the Xbox jerseys.
The Commanders donkey stomped the Chargers 27-10, and that's what it was. And the Commanders get back on track, but the Chargers losing some of that momentum that they had from beating the Chiefs. They lose to the Giants and they Charger. And I think it's kind of proving that, like, yeah, Ladd McConkey's awesome. What else? What else you got?
Yeah, and like I think they found somebody in Mario Hampton. I mean, so there are pieces there. I just feel like something's off. I think defensively, we knew that this roster was kind of piecemeal together, and this was basically Minter's brain getting it to play at a really high level. It still is. Derwin James is obviously he's one of the best chess pieces in the NFL that you can have. You have the injuries, and look, that will be the excuse. Well, hey, we've had injuries at tackle for the Chargers. Well, you decided in the offseason that this was going to be the year that you flip on the passing. Greg Roman went and talked to somebody this offseason, got a whole brand new passing playbook, started marrying things together. And now I feel like you've kind of lost your identity. That was kind of always the thing that we knew going into last year was like, look, you are in for an absolute brawl. It is going to be knockdown, drag out. They're going to punch you in the face. You got to survive it. You're going to have to wait till the fourth quarter and try and maybe either pull away because they don't really want to throw the ball. And look, it was never an indictment on Herbert. Herbert is amazing. Herbert is good. If you watch any of these games and you come away and you're like, nah, he's not a top 10 quarterback, you're not watching the same game as everybody else. He's completing passes. The problem is, like you said, they're going to like Ladd McConkey or they're going to a tight end. And then or even with the Quentin Johnson, they're getting there and then they're getting tackled. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of open receivers. There's not a lot of explosive plays. And so, I just think like Alt's replacement has been just getting absolutely abused. And so that's the catalyst of these issues, but it's also the year that you decided you wanted to start throwing the ball and let Herbert play quarterback.
All right, whatever. The Broncos won. But anywho.
No, we ain't skipping over this one. Hey, this defense is legit. If you wanted to watch a fun game, that was a fun game to watch. I mean, just take my Broncos hat off for a second. That game was a lot of fun to watch. Fangio versus Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph, look, a lot of people don't consider Vance Joseph one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL, but it's also a point proven. If you can get a guy like Joseph, the players that he needs to run his scheme, because he is kind of a more aggressive Wade Phillips, which means he's going to be a 3-4, a lot of 5-man fronts, a lot of pressures. The D-line is going to be the focus. This game had 6 sacks. Again, Benito, I love why you cannot. Nick Benito is one of the most explosive edges I have ever seen. It is amazing.
Probably one of those guys that doesn't even look like a football player without pads on.
He looks he is what like the Eagles wish like Nolan Smith was. Like Nolan, he looks like he looks like a linebacker, but he plays edge, and they're probably like Nolan Smith is good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he starts for the Eagles, but it's like he doesn't have the same get off. And then you got Jonathan Cooper, who how did he fall to the 6th round? He's a 10 sack guy too. So the craziest stat from this is, and I did not know this. This is one of those where they always pull like the most random stat about this game. This is only the 2nd time in 113 tries that the Broncos have won when trailing by 14 points in the fourth quarter. That's an insane stat. 2 of 113.
Yeah, that is, I mean, and it's a real notch on Bo Nix's belt, because as good as last season was, they hadn't beaten a legitimate top tier type team. I know they had the late season win over the Chiefs last season, but obviously that was a Week 18 game. But getting a win over the reigning defending Super Bowl champs, the undefeated, giving them their first loss on the season. Also, not no more undefeated teams left, with the Patriots knocking off the Buffalo Bills in another nice cash in for me, plus 8.5. It's definitely going to be an ugly game that I figured was going to be a little lower scoring, even lower scoring than what it ended up being, 23-10 on a field goal. So how about Drake May and Mike Vrabel? Completely different from what they were last year, where it's like it kind of felt like they're trying to keep up with the Belichick era with Gerard Mayo, but then it's like, oh no, if we're going to keep it up, might as well just go to the newer and better version of it, or what was the more modern version of it with Mike Vrabel.
The guy they should have hired. I mean, the guy they should have hired.
And that was the most obvious thing with the most obvious hire this year. I wanted him to go to the Chargers or wherever the hell else, or even if Cincinnati were to move on, he could have been there. And so, like, but seeing him in New England, it just works.
Yes. And then you have, look, the other thing too is that he has the pieces there and he knows how to do it. Now, look, they're going to be limited a little bit on the roster. They're not going to be, look, Stephon Diggs looks like he is back. It looks like this is the Stephon Diggs we expected in Houston and didn't get. Mm-hmm. He looks like he's the star of the show.
New England needs it.
Yes. And that they kept kind of going back to Diggs about, oh, he's like really matured. He's become kind of a leader of a team. And it's like, well, yeah, he's the alpha. And then two, I think Collinsworth made a really good compliment. And this is probably something that fans don't necessarily understand too, sometimes about team building. The Bills really needed Josh Allen to be the leader of that team. And he probably could have never been that guy if Diggs was still there. And Diggs forced his way out. Let's be honest. He wanted a lot. That offense and Joe Brady, kind of like everybody eats buffet style. You know, they did the funny little deal of like it was a buffet style, works there. And I think now he's allowed to go into the system. He can be that kind of diva receiver, right? He can be that alpha. Everybody's looking at him. Everybody's feeding off of him. Drake May is young and needs that. So it's kind of like that early career of Allen where it's like, I need somebody to kind of
Bryant to Dak Prescott. He needs that target to go to. It's almost like Patrick Mahomes on an even higher scale needed Travis Kelce and still does.
And this is also for Mike Vrabel. It really shows you what a culture change can do for a team. You know, they were talking to one of the Tony Dungy was talking to one of the trainers he mentioned on the broadcast yesterday before the show, was like, it just feels different. This team has never felt like that. Even when we were winning Super Bowls, it was never really fun. You know, Vrabel was like, my worst day of the week is Tuesday when the players don't come in, because I just want to talk to the players. I want to make them better. I want to have that conversation. So I love that. Look, Vrabel is like the kind of coach that you wish, like if you were a player that you had, or if you're a coach, he's somebody that you want to aspire to. He's hard-nosed. He gets in there. People are going to make fun of him because he loves to run the drills with the players. And if you've ever been a coach,
that's the coolest thing you could do. Now, I don't care if people make fun of him for it. Like, that is especially in the National Football League, these are the best athletes in the world. And you're like, all right, let's go.
Well, and he's a Hall of Famer, but even then, like, he does it in a non-cheesy way, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are coaches out there that are always getting in it, but it's usually they're trying to play the scout team quarterback all the time. They're just throwing bombs and they're trying to run around. And
he's like, no, I will play outside, weak side linebacker. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm going to go work with the tight ends. I'm going to go work with the D-line. I'm going to work with the O-line. He's not trying to be like the receiver coach that's out there trying to route people up and stuff like that. So, yeah, it can be cheesy, but I think with him, it proves that it's not. It proves also, you mentioned it earlier, coaching in football matters. It matters more than any other sports. Yes, don't get me wrong. The Jimmies and the Joes are what wins you games, but that culture set point, the CEO of the team, that is going to be it. Just a few things to wrap us up. Let's go back to school. What's going on in college? Because we don't want to do this. One, I am so confused with Cincinnati football. I don't know if they want to win. I don't know if they want to lose. Do you want to be a good program? Do you not? Another upset against the Cyclones. Cyclones now are not undefeated. We had Arch Manning continues to fade away, much like Bill Belichick. Those were the two topics that everybody wanted to talk about college football-wise. Stumbled predictably. I think we all saw that coming, that L that Texas was going to take. They have no run game, which is weird to me as well. Like, it's very anti-Sark. They have no run game, which does not help Manning at all.
Yes. Yeah.
I think go ahead.
And I think especially like if your entire system is set up on RPOs and screens, you have to have a good
and two, like play action passes, like with only two guys running routes, like you've got to set up the run game. So like everything, it's funny
with 8 guys in the box.
Yes. And I think I have a buddy that is works with the Dolphins, and he was like, yeah, basically the Texas runs kind of the same offense. And if you think about it, do they run the same plays? Not necessarily, but if you think about it, a lot of perimeter screens, a lot of play action shots, and it's predicated on the run game winning. If the run game isn't winning, it's not very good. And then, hey, we're going to wrap it up on this. Penn State did what against UCLA, Felix?
Dude, Penn State. Fire James Franklin, because I don't think he wants to be there either. Like, this is crazy. And I know UCLA fired the guy, but like the coach is like, we're out in LA. And then Neuheisel's kid. You got the Ken doll out there kicking your ass. Like, what's going on?
Dude, like, it's like one of those, like, yeah, you get the fired coach bump, but not against the top 5 team, like, in the country. This, to me, this screams that they were a pretender all along. If you go and you lose this game in the way that they lost it, yeah, sure, they kind of came back. Look, there is something, and I've mentioned this before on here. There's something about Aller I just don't like. I think he's got everything that you would want in an NFL quarterback. I just don't. There are things I don't like. He doesn't do well against pressure. We talked about that last year against Boise State. He looked really bad. He doesn't do. This to me is a pure choke. And
my note on Drew Aller, I've seen in some of his interviews, he's got a little bit of this Bo Callahan from draft day, like nobody's going to his birthday party type of attitude. Where it's like, hey, well, why are you so mean? You don't have to be so mean.
I'm sure he's a nice kid. I'm sure people show up to his birthday party. But yeah, I just think like this is the most Penn State thing I think I've seen. Well, other than them losing to Ohio State every year. I think that, but again, this is one of those, another situation where, you can't fly from the East time zone into the West time zone and then expect it to just be. And here's the other thing. There's no excuse. It wasn't a short week. They didn't play on like a Friday. There's no, the layover, right? Well, not really, because it wasn't an early game. This wasn't an 11 o'clock kickoff. Like you're basically kicking off at 9. This was an afternoon game. It's not hot there. It's September in LA. I don't know if you've ever been in LA. The weather's awesome there year round. So it's not, I don't know. Maybe there wasn't enough fans in the stands. I don't know, but man, James Franklin.
The city of angels, because it feels like heaven, but not when you're a Nittany Lion. Good God.
No, it was bad. So thanks again for joining us on another Let's Talk Ball. Remember, this is the one podcast that actually is going to tell you what's going on the field. Make sure to subscribe.
I'm going to start a beef with him.
Start a beef with Danny. I'll text him too and be like, hey, Felix wants to start beef with you because, that'll get some clicks.
For followers. Danny.